I'll just scream. I realize my own characteristics, and I think I overstep my boundary. I'm supposed to stand behind the edge of the rug, and this tendency of getting close to people that got me into trouble. And also, I don't know about you, because I find myself have a tendency of ADHD.
Really?
How many people could identify with that? Yay, good. ADHD is not a handicap. It is an advantage. That means you've got energy. You could focus on different things at the same time, right? But it is a disaster in the classroom for teachers. And I thought, if I ever was in a classroom, a rigid classroom, I'm sure they would ask my parents to give me Ritalin. And that will probably put me to sleep. And at this time, after your lunch and after the quiz, I'm so glad there was a quiz. It kind of wakes you up a little bit. But sometimes, like when you have clients all day from, say, 9 o'clock, you don't finish until 5 o'clock. How do you feel? You're exhausted. Yeah. So how many clients do you in general see on one day?
5, 6.
3, let's say, how many have more than 3? All of you. More than 4, more than 5. Some days are 5. What was the maximum client that you have seen?
6, 7.
7. You know what? That is a number I got all the time. I have seen 7 clients. And I usually tell my students, make sure you don't put 2 depressed clients at the same time. Always have one that is lighter, that something is easier. But every case, it doesn't matter. They don't care how tired you are, how many clients you have seen. They come here, they want the best of you. They always bring in the worst of themselves. So you are the healer. You are the facilitator. You are whatever they project onto you, and you just have to be there for yourself. And this is why it's so important. And we've got to realize how important is our job, how demanding is our job, and we need self-care. Now, on the syllabus there, but I think I'm going to add one section of self-care so that we can share among ourselves in group discussion under those circumstances. How do I care about myself? But you could structure it in such a way that say I could only take 3 clients from 9 to 12. Okay, that's only 3 hours, right? And then I had an hour for lunch, and I could take 3 more in the afternoon, or only 2. So you've got to negotiate with your clinic or your organization, to be effective, I could only do 3. But of course, if you just do career counseling, well, they think you could just pass them out like hotcakes, right? So this is the thing that we wanted to talk about, self-care and also who you are and know your own limitations. And early professionals, they usually come out and say, oh, my 10 o'clock client's already here and I'm not quite ready. And they're here 9:45. I said, your contract is you're going to see them at 10 o'clock. All right, they are here for 15 minutes. You don't have to bring them into your room. They are there in the waiting room. You finish your report. You go out for fresh air, and you do some stretching if you need to. So that is self-care. And I think this is so important. And I bring this up because when we talk about cultural selves, different cultural clients will have different expectations. And also different people who have a different personality, they have different needs, so they wanted you to meet their needs. So you have to realize that you have needs yourself, and you also need to fulfill the needs of others. So this is why it's so complicated when you talk about cross-cultural counseling. Now, I always said behaviors are a product of three things. One, genetics, personality characteristics, and those are genetically ingrained, inborn. And you have that, the clients have that. Could we change it? We could modify behavior by knowing, that what would hinder or what would facilitate, those makeups. But it's also environment. And you have to understand where these people are coming from in their environment. What kind of environment are we talking about? Learning environment, home environment, working environment, and social environment. It's very complex, isn't it? We could say it so easily, but it involves so much. So you have to understand your clients where they come from. And the other third factor is learning. What kind of behavior, what kind of reinforcement, what kind of things that they have learned to relate to people or to deal with a particular problem. So there's a lot of things in a behavior. So when you see a client, they behave such and such, to you it's that, oh my goodness, here's a puzzle. I have to solve this puzzle. And then you started to explore. And it's more important in the cross-cultural area. So what are we talking about when we talk about culture? Okay. I don't think I want to spend too much time on this. What I want to achieve in this lecture, probably it is a very important area that we need to learn. And especially I could see we are from all different cultures. And there's so much we can get out of each other. So we're not going to rush this part, okay? Because we would leave we'll start it and we might expand and we might share more next weekend. Is that okay with you? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah. And so what I wanted to cover would be we need to learn how to deal with multicultural issues. So we need to be competent. Now, this word really bothers me. We always talk about we practice within our area of competence. Yeah, right. And then we got to be competent in this, we're competent in that. As if there is a box, you learn all these tricks, you're competent. No, our society changes all the time. Our culture changes all the time. And our environment and our, exposure also change. Therefore, your competence would be at this time, at this point in time, facing this particular problem, and this is why I think I can do it. But then when the client brought something else and it kind of challenged your sense of competency, and say, uh-oh. And be honest, be humble. You learn. You always say, well, yeah, I come to learn from you. Like you come here and say, I want to learn from you, the Wongs. No, the Wongs learn from you too, right? And in knowledge, in learning, is two ways communication. and learning. So this is why I say it's so important that we don't say, I am already competent, I've got everything. No, you don't. You still have a long way to go. But at this time important, point in time, and this problem, I have dealt with it, and that's it.
When you're seeing someone to
See progress in your client.
yeah,
You see progress. You see growth. You see a smile on somebody's face when they came in with sad faces, right? And that is sad. But we don't wait until 8 sessions away to see that smile. We must see the smile when the client comes in your door, in your room. When they leave, they must feel better before they go. And that is our goal, right? But then when we talk about so many problems that they carry in, how can we do that? So we have to set doable goals. Somebody said, I'm depressed. Could you help me? I said, yes, we could work together. We could help. I think I could help you, but you had to work with me, and you had to be patient with me, and we work. So it's one step at a time. And more so if you are a cross-cultural client, because you have to learn their culture. You have to learn the way they think, the way they interact, and the way they react to you. So this is why there are a lot of face-to-face adjustment the first few sessions. And don't be discouraged. Something, you feel overwhelmed. We feel overwhelmed all the time, but we learn to manage it, right? And so this is why humility is very important. And then we talk about what is the meaning of culture and cultural, turn this off. Yeah, cultural identity. Who are you culturally? Who am I culturally? Have you ever thought about this? You have. Good, good. Have you written anything about this? Have you told anybody about this? Some have and some are not. So sometimes it is nice to affirm oneself and make you feel good about your identity, but not always, kind of, no. Sometimes they say, I wish I'm not, right? And my son, when he was in grade 2, was, Mom, I wish I'm white. And I said, why do you want to be white? Because all my friends are white, right? And so after my niece came home from kindergarten, I said, Lilian, happened to be my school too. I said, Lilian, what am I? I said, you are Jennifer. No. People told me I am not white and I am not Chinese. What am I? It's hard when you talk about, racial identity. Who am I? And that is a very, very complex concept for children to comprehend. And then to accept. In my family, from my mother's generation, my grandparents came here in 1896. Okay, both my parents were born in Toronto. My mother was born in the Jewish area, the Jewish market downtown, and my father was close to Parkdale. You could see his grade 4-5 class picture, the only Chinese boy, And my mother's older brother married a white woman. So my cousins is half-half. And she had a hard time being part Chinese. So, people talk about discrimination. I said, you really don't know what discrimination is. And it's so much more accepting because our society had been more multicultural, more diverse. When I went to Riverdale, we were the only Chinese family with 2 Japanese families. 50 years anniversary, I went visited. I couldn't find a blonde hair, blue eyes among all the pictures on the wall. They were all, Italian, Greek, Chinese, Korean. You see, we had changed a lot. So this is why we are at the edge of multiculturalism. And nobody would even ask. Now, I was one of the lucky ones to marry a Chinese guy. My brothers married white. And then like my nieces, nephews, they are, mixed. And then my nieces, one married to a Ghanaian, and she's got a baby that's gorgeous, all get out. And then we have, my nephew who's half Chinese, half white, married a white woman, and then their children are more white, and yet you have one that looks Chinese. And then when you say we are siblings, how come you look different? You see, there are so many variations of mixing in our genetics. So how do you work with clients who hate to be who they are? Isn't that interesting? And not only the look, not only the genes, but the way they were raised. My daughter-in-law is Korean. She came at Christmas time. She said, Lilian, could you teach Penelope a jingle in Chinese? And black sheep, no, that isn't the Chinese. Everything I thought about, I don't know. I phoned my sisters. Do you have any Chinese jingles? And nobody. So then my bookkeeper, she's Chinese, she said, I can write you some. I said, writing to me is not going to make it. You got to dictate it to me and train me so that I could train my granddaughter. You see, culturally, we have gone so far that we've forgotten where we come from. However, in a majority society, they look at you, what is the first thing they see? Skin color. As soon as they see the color, you are different. Somehow, when we want to make relationship, we are looking for similarities. We are trying to make the differences more important than it is necessary. And so, with that background, how do we share people? You don't sit there, I did not tell you about my background, where I'm coming from, and all that, right? Because I don't see the need for it. But I'm sure in the back of your mind, somewhere in the subconscious, under the conscious level, you will wonder, I wonder if she speaks Chinese, I wonder if they speak Mandarin or Cantonese. Yes, I see ni hao, that's as far as I would go in Mandarin. Right? Cantonese I manage a bit, but my husband will say sometimes, they say, I answer, very bravely, answer, and then he'll put me, that's not what he meant. That made me feel, oh, what did I answer? You see, you kind of use closure in your language, right? You understand this word, that word, and you assume that's what they asked you for, so you just answer, right? And somebody will know that, that's not what all right. So it's kind of discouraging, isn't it? So it is good to be open and tell them, I know this, I don't know this, I'm sorry, because you're going to be relating to your clients at the level that is more than normal friendship. It's not friendship. It's a genuine relationship that you can share life experiences, help them, and they can share with you. And by not even nonverbal, they can learn from you. Now that sounds abstract. But anybody from the energy camp, it is real. But in the more theoretical evidence-based. That is not quite, but it does. You transmit your care by just your look, by just your smile, by just being comfortable with yourself. And you notice, even when you train dogs and cats, when you're tense, they go like this, you know? And human is more sensitive, which sometimes we ignore. But we can't afford to ignore if you are a trained therapist. You could see your client's comfort level. And then also you have to manage yourself in a comfortable way so that they can feel that you are comfortable, so they increase their level of comfort with you. And that is so nebulous, but it is so important, and it is so real. So that's why I'm just talking about the cultural identity. And my friend Paul Peterson, and he used to be at the University of Hawaii. Now he's back in Missouri. So he coined the word unintentional racism. You see, a lot of what I just mentioned is unintentional. They are not going to say, I discriminate against you because you have something different from me. No, it's just so natural. It's just, I don't know. You think animals could always gravitate towards their own kind? I think they do.
Yes.
And also we were at lunch, we talked about sometimes you kind of right away you relate. So I think when there are differences and that kind of block the channel of natural relating. And you can't, you can't blame them, and you shouldn't feel guilty, and you don't have to apologize. And I always said, we can never eliminate discrimination. Agree with me?
Yeah.
If it's not for color, it would be
Religion,
gender or
Religion.
religion.
Age.
Yes, so many things, right? Economic status, jobs. This is a good exercise. If I ask you to say who you are, introduce yourself, who you are. You say your name, what would be the next thing you would say?
What are you from?
Well, right now, because it's more of a professional thing, I relate to my profession.
Right. And this is because of the environment, and you see your situation. That's why your identity is not always fixed, is it? And it's always depending on the environment where you were being part of it.
You're absolutely right, because I don't know about you guys, like I said, I'm Polish, and I'm not very, very long time in Canada, but if I am in this kind of group, and I introduce myself, I'm gonna say my name, and I'm gonna say I'm Polish. So excuse my English, it's not perfect and probably never will be. But if I am with Polish people and that I introduce myself, I'm gonna say my name, and I'm gonna say what I do. So there is and I just realized that the moment when you were saying that switching how we act depends of where we are.
Exactly. And we have to be all men. What was that? To all men. We have to be who we are to all men. But then we have to shape it in such a way without offending.
Yeah, but even then, we're doing this unconsciously. At least I do.
Exactly.
Because I
Exactly.
don't pay attention to it. I just say that.
So how do we overcome? Sometimes when we find ourselves in a awkward situation, and how do we overcome that? For example, if people say, okay, we are not educated, you are educated, right away you see the gap, right? How do you overcome that? You can, if they ask you, you have to say it honestly, but if that will create a distance between you and the person, how would you manage it, and without a broken relationship or awkwardness or having some kind of invisible barrier.
And try to find common grounds, like their interests.
Mhm.
In
Okay.
some ways, I think even not knowing how to, I like purple too. So that would be a common ground, right? So I guess finding something that will sort of break that barrier.
Mm-hmm. You see, barriers are created by our head, right? And we are smart people. We always learn how to navigate through that. And I always say in my card, it said, who you are is more important than what you say. Right? In other words, you've got to build your own character. You've got to be comfortable with who you are. And you want to be comfortable with other people, and you've got to be very honest. But how can we get there? I think therapists are much further along than most people, or I don't want to name some other professions because they take me. You know, in some profession, you just want business, right? You negotiate, right? And you get the maximum amount or negotiate contract. And I mean, yeah, that's okay. I don't care who you are, but that contract you got to sign. But in our human industry, we have to be who we are and genuinely be happy with who we are, right? In order to do that, we need to do a lot of reflection, don't we? That's why when Paul was talking about transference, counter-transference, and I had a lot of notes, and I say, yeah, this is what we all need to do. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, but once in a while you've got to wake yourself up. You've got to say, hey, Lilian, that isn't right. You know? And so this is why I always advocate group peer supervision. And don't practice. For those who are in private practice, find someone you can share. Because it's a lonely world. If you're going to practice on your own, what do you do, right? So you always need to connect. And I hope these classes will facilitate that. You get to know one another. You could call one another, and that would be really nice and helpful. And what's microaggression? Anybody heard about that? Yeah. Okay, could you give me an example? Was that Toby?
Okay, I can give an example. So microaggression might be if, let's say a boss is male and he maybe subconsciously doesn't respect women as much. When he's looking at people looking for responses, he's looking at the men and discounting them.
And sometimes the word came out. That was what they learned in childhood. And they never realized it was very derogatory. And that, and then when you see somebody like that, right away you throw that word out. That is microaggression, isn't it? You say something to satisfy your own discomfort, the sense of discrimination or anger, and how come you are here and you shouldn't be here, back to your home country, that type of thing. And that's microaggression, isn't it? You don't have to hit them in the nose. So sometimes these things will prevent us to connect with our clients. And also we talk about awareness of cultural differences that we have talked about, and also what do we mean by individualistic society, collectivistic society? And how do we identify those? Yes.
Is that when the culture is very much, we're part of the same community, when it's collective, we're part of the same community, our services are about me supporting you and you supporting me, it's kind of a we thing. And then another culture, on the other hand, may be more about you need to do what you need to do to be successful. It's much more individual.
So we're going to talk a little more about
It's
this.
the me rather than the we.
Right. And then we talk about self-disclosure in cross-culture. Some people demand that you answer the questions. How are you going to deal with that? They will say, okay, and how about you? You challenge you so that you are listening to me. I want to know a little bit about you. So shall we or shall we not? We were just talking about self-disclosure has to be for the benefit of the client. But if the client wanted more than you wish to share, all of a sudden you say, I don't want to tell you, right? And we have the right not to. And how do we say it without offending, without building the barrier that it wasn't there before? You see, so I mean, dealing with people is a very delicate process. And if you are not sensitive to other people's feelings, and you're not going to be a good therapist. But if you're overly sensitive, then you cannot control yourself, and you're not very effective. So you're not in a win situation, right? I have a student who wanted me to recommend him for a Ph.D. in counseling psychology. And I looked at him and I said, do you like people? And I know that he doesn't talk to people. He doesn't like people. He said 7 years in undergrad, I only met one friend. And I said, you know what? I don't think at this time I could recommend you until you prove to me that you are comfortable with people, but find out what you can do best. It's very good, very successful in the IT world. You see, sometimes it is for their good. They think their friends were in this, or maybe they have a sense of that, oh, I want to help people. This is the profession I should get to. But as a counselor, sometimes you need to say something that is true, to be honest. Sometimes it may not be well received at that moment, but it is on the long term. This is why it is so important that we are not hindrance for the growth of our clients. And this is why we need to soul searching. And there are guidelines at APA and so on. I got some